It's good to be with you today. My name is Steve. If you don't know me, I'm one of the pastors here. Would you guys join me in welcoming those who are here for the first time or watching online? Yeah, we're so excited that you're here with us today as we are wrapping up our series called Ignition. We've been talking about missions, we've been talking about evangelism, and spreading the good news of Jesus to the people that are around us, to the people that are all around the world. Last week, we had an awesome privilege. If you were here, you know what I'm talking about. We had Luke Camera with us. Him and his wife Shayna are missionaries to Portugal, and they are just following God's call and sharing the good news in Portugal. And we get a great privilege of partnering with them in that mission, and they partner with us in our mission here in Williamsport. And last week, Luke talked about that mission of all of Jesus for all the world. And he said that's going to take all of us. And yeah, he meant all of us, but he also meant all of us, like every part of us. It's just going to take that. And so that ties in so well with what we're going to be talking about today. Before we dive in, I want you to know next week, it's crazy that this is coming, but next week we're going to be kicking off our Advent series, Making Room in Advent. So make sure you come, make sure you bring a friend with you. Pastor Nathan's going to also be sharing about our vision for generosity for this Christmas season and talking about our Christmas offering this year. And you don't want to miss that. So make sure you're here next week. Also, as part of our Advent season celebration, I want to make sure everybody knows about our annual Christmas party. We're going to be up at Camp Susquehanna. You can sign up by scanning this QR code that's right here on the screen. I don't see enough phones. Everybody get their phone out. Sign up to come to the Christmas party. So it's December 14th. We're going to be up at Camp Susquehanna. We were there last year. It was a blast, and you don't want to miss the Christmas party. It's such a good time. We're going to provide the main dish. You just bring a side or a dessert to share. So just scan that, sign up. We'll see you up at Camp Susquehanna in a couple weeks. A few weeks ago, when Pastor Nathan kicked off this series, he reminded us of the blessed practices. And we use this as a tool to help us reach our neighbors, to reach our friends, to reach the people in the moms group or our basketball team, whatever. It's just a way to share God with them. And it's begin with prayer, listen with care, eat together, serve with love, and share your story. And today we're going to be focusing on the share your story part of the blessed practices. This is where this gets personal. And sharing your story isn't just about opening your mouth, it's also about opening your heart as you share part of who you are and how you became who you are with people. And we just need to share our stories. So I want to ask you this question. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but our world, our culture is drawn to story. Think about advertising, for example. There's been a shift in advertising over the years. It used to be all about products and facts. It was like, this detergent gets whites whiter, or this truck has more horsepower, or this phone takes better pictures. But advertising has shifted, and they've started to tell stories in the ads. And now it's more like you see this dad teaching his daughter to drive, and then a car logo shows up on the screen, and it's a car commercial. Or you see a soldier coming home to his family, and suddenly it's an insurance commercial. Or you see a dog wandering aimlessly through a storm, and by some strange stretch, that's a dog food commercial. But why? Because marketers have caught on to something that God's known all along. And that's that facts inform people, but stories move them. Stories touch our hearts. They spark our imagination. They move us toward action because God hardwired us for story. The Bible itself, it's not just a list of disconnected commands. It's one great story about a God who rescues, who redeems, who restores. When Jesus taught, all throughout the New Testament, we see he didn't just hand out bullet points. He used stories. He used real life encounters. He told parables. Parables are just like simple stories that are used to help people understand deeper spiritual truth. God reveals himself through story. And he's still doing that today, but he's using your story to do it. Here's the thing, though. Most of us don't share our stories. We keep them to ourselves. And sometimes maybe we don't share them because we don't think people care. They don't want to hear that. You know, we don't want to bother people. But guys, you got to know this. Inviting people to church, sharing your story with them is actually showing them that you do care about them. I found this video on Instagram. Check this out.
I've never seen you go to a church.
What do you mean I do? I go to church every Sunday.
Do you really go to church every Sunday morning?
How many Sundays have I missed, McCone? McCone knows.
I mean, none.
Kidding me, dude? You go to church every Sunday?
What do you...
Okay. Stop for a second.
Okay.
That says a lot about our relationship.
Why?
Because you've never invited me, and you don't want me to be saved.
Do you think you could get up at 8 to go to church? For real?
I go up on Sunday mornings, and I go to Third and Gardner, which is an early AA meeting. I go to that.
That's at 10:30, you said.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to go 2.5 hours?
But you think I sleep? You think I sleep when I go to Third and Gardner? No, I stay up all night.
Well, that's not good.
That's my point. I would go if you try to save me, but you don't want me to go. You don't want me to go to heaven.
I want you to go to heaven.
You don't want me saved, dude.
I want you to go to heaven, but I do think I've already put in a couple of requests, and they've been denied.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are obviously friends, right? You know, we've got friends. We have no problem talking to our friends about a restaurant we just ate at, or a movie that we really liked, or this vacation we just got back from. But when it comes to Jesus, we get quiet. Why? Well, there's an author named Jeff Vanderstelt. He says it really well. Check this out. I am convinced that the main reason people don't talk about Jesus is not that they lack training. I am convinced it is that they lack love. Can you say amen to that? If you can't, say ouch, because, man, that one hurts. And I'm not saying this to be harsh or to be judgy, but do we really love lost people? Do we love the people that Jesus died for? Or do we love them so much so that we are willing to inconvenience ourselves, that we are willing to make ourselves uncomfortable and share our story with them? Guys, that's what Jesus did. He made people uncomfortable all the time. He asks us to get uncomfortable. You know, he did that all the time. The story that we're going to look at this morning that Sarah read for us today, we're talking about this blind guy that's healed. Jesus made this guy uncomfortable. I mean, he spit on the ground and put mud on his face. So we're going to be jumping into John chapter 9. If you're not already there, you can turn there. You can follow along on the screen. But the man in this passage, he had nothing. Nothing but a story. And God used his story to shake his community. And as we walk through his story today, we're also going to talk about how we can tell our stories. Because John 9 it's not just a story of a miracle, it's also a model. A model of how we can tell our stories. Your story has the same movements as this guy's. And each of our stories has these three parts. One, before Jesus. What was going on in life before you met Jesus? Then meeting Jesus. How did Jesus come into your life? How did you meet him? And then the third one is life now. What's life been like since meeting Jesus? So we're going to walk through these both in the text and in our lives. Here we go. John opens the chapter like this. He says, as he went along, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. We're going to pause there for a minute. This is his before Jesus. He's blind. He's begging. He's blamed. He's defined by what he's lacking. He's living in darkness. Every story starts here. We all have a need. Your story does too. Your before Jesus might not be physical blindness like the guy in this story, but you have a version of it, whether that's fear that you've lived under, or sin you couldn't break, a wound that you just carried, a lie that you couldn't stop believing, an emptiness that you tried to fill. Your story begins where the pain was. And so Jesus' disciples, they look at this man and they say, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? What caused this? The disciples look at this man and they see a problem to solve. But Jesus sees a person to redeem. They want to assign blame, but Jesus wants to reveal God's purpose. Maybe that's someone here today. Maybe you felt for a long time like you're just this problem that needs to be fixed instead of a person to be loved. If that's you, I just want to say to you today, no matter how many problems you have, God loves you. You're not your problems. You are loved by God. But Jesus looks at his disciples and he's like, no. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. But this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. See, Jesus reframes the situation here. This man's brokenness isn't pointless. Your before is not something to be hidden. It's actually the backdrop for God's glory. How many of you have seen the movie Jaws? Wow, not that many. Fix that, please. Jaws is great. I love the movie Jaws. Anyways, for those of you who haven't seen it, which is way less of you than should be the case, let me set the stage for you a little bit. There's these three guys. They're named Brody, Hooper, and Quint, and they're out hunting this big killer shark. And, the mood is serious. They're exhausted. They're on edge. They're kind of afraid if they're actually going to survive this hunt of the killer shark. And then in this rare moment of calm, one of them mentions like an old injury, and suddenly the whole tone shifts. Hooper rolls up his pant leg and shows a scar, and he starts telling the story about how he got that scar. And then Quint fires back, I've got a bigger one. Do you look here? And they just kind of go back and forth for a while, sharing scar stories with each other. And, they're swapping their close calls, they're swapping, their near-death experiences over the course of their lives. But then there's just this powerful thing that kind of hits you. Their scars connect them because it's helping them share their stories with each other. And they're getting to know each other. Guys, you have scars too. Maybe they're physical ones. Maybe they're emotional. Maybe they're spiritual. I have mine too. Before I met Jesus, I felt entitled to live however I wanted to. I was rebellious, totally selfish. I didn't care much about how God wanted me to live. And then I turned 5. Hey, a lot of 4-year-olds are selfish, okay? But seriously, part of my story is realizing that just because I'm born into a Christian family doesn't make me a Christian. I made a commitment to following Jesus when I was 5 years old. But it wasn't until I was 12 and I was dealing with a season of fear and insecurity and discouragement that was shaping me more than my faith was, that Jesus really healed me in the places, where I was feeling broken. I didn't even know we're broken. And your scars, they aren't signs of shame. They're signs of healing. A scar means that you healed. And they're part of your story. Because every story starts with darkness. Just like in John 9, just like in your story. All right, let's jump back into this guy's story. This is where he meets Jesus, the second part of how you tell your story, meeting Jesus. John says this, After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Can we pause for a second? This is weird. I mean, this guy seeks out Jesus, asks him to heal him, and before he knows it, Jesus is putting like spit mud on his face. He's probably like, this is not how I pictured this going. But it says, go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. This is the moment of meeting Jesus, the moment of being seen, touched, and changed. Can you guys imagine this moment with me for just a minute? This guy has never seen his parents' faces before, just been guided by their voice. He's never seen his own hands or looked someone in the eye. His entire life has been based on sound and touch. And then suddenly, he's opening his eyes and he's seeing faces and colors and lights in his own hands and all of himself for the first time. His first sight is obedience turning into a miracle. He didn't just receive sight that day, though. He received a story of encounter, of grace, of transformation. Here's the thing. Many of us experience meeting Jesus differently. For some, it's dramatic, like this guy. For some, it's slow and quiet. For some, it's a crisis. For some, it's just a conversation. You know, my mud on the eyes moment was at Beulah Beach camp when I was 12. God showed me that my faith had to be my own, not just the faith that my parents had. That faith of my own could touch the wounds that I had and heal them over and turn them into scar stories. And he spoke to me that night in the chapel off of Lake Erie. And he helped me see that I needed to fear only one thing, and that's him. Not the kind of fear that's like, God, I'm so scared of you. But I respect you. I'm in awe of you and who you are and what only you can do in my life. You have a mud on your eyes moment too. A moment where Jesus opened your eyes. A moment where grace broke through into your life. A moment where God met you in your fear, in your doubt, in your exhaustion, in your anxiety. And this is where you show how Jesus entered into your story. Let's see what happens with this guy next. His neighbors ask, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? And this is what he says. The man they call Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. And I went and I washed, and now I see. It's amazing as he's sharing this part of his story. And then we jump down further into the story, and he's before the religious leaders. They're interrogating him. They're looking for a way to discredit this, to make Jesus out to be the bad guy. They want an explanation, but the healed man doesn't argue with them. He doesn't debate with them. He doesn't preach a sermon. He just says, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. I used to be blind. I met this guy. Now I see. And he shares his story. This is the third part. Life now. What difference is Jesus making in your life? What's different because you met him? How do you think differently? How do you love differently? How do you live differently? Where is God still working on you? Your story of now matters because people want to know what difference Jesus can actually make. And sometimes what you need to share with them isn't your entire story. It doesn't have to start at, I was a selfish 4-year-old. Maybe it's just the moment Jesus met you in your anxiety, in your grief, in your loss, in your waiting, in your weakness. A single moment brings a bridge of hope for someone else. And I remember talking with one of our former youth group students in our previous church. We were sitting in a park. It was night. It was kind of dark. But he was just going through a breakup. And, he was hurting. And, you know how devastating that can be. A lot of us have been there. We've experienced something like that. And I told him, man, I get it. Because I did. I went through a brutal breakup in college that nearly broke me. It felt like the ground was just ripped right out from under me. But I was able to share with him how God brought me through it, how God used that season to grow me and to steady me and eventually lead me somewhere better than I could have imagined. Without that breakup, I wouldn't be married to my wife, Amanda. I wouldn't have the 3 boys that I have today. It led to there because of Jesus. This is life now. And even though he was still hurting, something changed. He could see some hope. He could see that God meets us in the middle of heartbreak and he leads us through. He realized his pain wasn't the end of his story. That's the power of your story. Your now gives someone a glimpse of who Jesus can be for them. Now that we've walked through this guy's story, and we've talked through our own stories a little bit, we need to answer a really important question. One we don't often like to answer, and that's why. Why does your story matter? Why should you share it? So let's dive in. Let's go a little deeper here. One, your story shows people who Jesus really is. Remember what we saw in the blind man's story. He didn't have this rehearsed message. He didn't have a polished argument for these people. He simply said what he experienced. I was blind, but now I see. And that's why people listened. Your lived experience is more powerful than any theological explanation that you can give anyone. This is why Jesus so often told stories. His parables, they weren't lectures, they were windows. They gave people a way to see God's heart. And when you share your story, you're doing that too. You're giving people a window to see Jesus, his compassion, his patience, his healing, his faithfulness. And think back. Remember we were talking about the ads at the beginning. A commercial doesn't argue. It shows. It paints a picture that helps people feel something. And when you tell your story, you're showing, not just telling, who Jesus is. It helps people imagine what Jesus could do in their life too. In John 9, the man didn't explain theology. He revealed Jesus through his transformation. You might be the only Bible that someone ever reads. They might never open a Bible, but they can't argue with your changed life. Your story becomes their first glimpse of Jesus' compassion and his power and his grace. That's why advertisers use stories, because they change what we believe about a product. And if a 30-second commercial can somehow change our perception of detergent, then I think your story, your life, can change someone's perception about Jesus. Your story also gives people hope in their own blindness. In this story, this man's transformation was a ripple effect. His neighbors were talking. The leaders were asking questions. A whole community was stirred up because of his story. Because hope is contagious. And people today are carrying their own kind of blindness. Fear, shame, disappointment, confusion. They need to know that change is possible. Earlier we were talking about scars, right? In the Jaws movie, they were telling their stories of survival. When you share your scars, people realize that healing is possible for them too. And remember that moment where we were kind of picturing how this guy experienced getting sight for the first time, seeing all the color and the faces and the light for the first time in his life. When you tell your story, you give people a taste of that moment where Jesus met you and healed you. You help them see that Jesus still opens eyes today. Your honesty can become hope for someone else. Everyone has a before. And when you share yours, you give others permission to believe that there is hope for their before. Blind man's story lifted his whole community. Your story can do the same for a coworker or a family member or a friend. Hope spreads when scars are revealed. And your story is God's chosen strategy. He gave you your story because he wanted to use it to help other people. When Jesus healed this guy, he didn't send him to seminary to learn how to talk to people, to learn all about theology. He didn't give him talking points. He just gave him a story and said, go tell it. Meeting Jesus is different for everyone. For some it's dramatic, for some it's quiet. But every encounter becomes part of God's plan to reach someone else. This is why Jesus chose to work through people and through our stories instead of just always sending angels or some supernatural sign in the sky. Because stories connect, stories disarm, stories build trust. Think back to that video that we were watching. One of the reasons people struggle to share about Jesus is we just assume people don't want to hear it. Or that we have to have all the answers. The blind man in this story, he said, look, man, I don't know. One thing I know. I know one thing. I couldn't see, now I see. Your story doesn't have to be perfect. Just honest. Because God uses ordinary people and ordinary stories to bring about extraordinary grace. When Jesus healed the blind man, the miracle didn't just end with him being able to see. The miracle carried on into witness, to where he could tell others about how he got his sight. God chose you, and he chose your story to influence people and to show them hope. Stories show what love looks like. Guys, listen. Someone in your life needs to hear your story. Maybe immediately you're like, oh yeah, I know who that is. I need to tell them my story. Maybe you don't know yet. And you need to ask God who that person is. But they need your story, not a sermon, not a debate, not a theological essay, your story. Because in God's hand, your story can bring sight to the blind. I want to give you a few action steps to take this with you, okay? All right, 1, reflect and write your story. Use the 3 things we talked about, the before Jesus, the meeting Jesus, and life since you met Jesus. Keep it simple. You got a handout on your way in today. It says your story at the top of it, and it's blank. Make it not blank. Write out your story. Reflect on it. Look at how God has brought you hope and made a difference in your life, and write it out. And then I want you to pray for one person. Guys, a few weeks ago, actually, when we started this series, you all got a little piece of paper. It was a Francis list of who you're going to pray for that needs Jesus. And you brought those up. You turned those in during communion. We've been praying for those. Hopefully you have been too. Maybe it's someone on that list. Maybe it's someone different. But pray for one person that needs to hear your story. Pray for an opportunity to share it. Pray for a listening heart for both you and them. And then go and share your story in love. look for a natural moment this week, a conversation, a meal, a text, share honestly, humbly, and with love. Look, guys, you're about to go and have Thanksgiving dinner with some family. Maybe some of the people that need Jesus and need to hear your story are your family that you're going to be with this week. And maybe instead of arguing over politics, you share your story. But remember, God never wastes a story. So don't hide it. Let it shine. Jesus is still opening eyes. And he wants to use your story to do it. Next week, we're starting the Advent season. We know that means Christmas is coming, not just because we have a giant Christmas tree over here. But we get excited about the presents, and we get excited about the good food, and maybe you get excited about the family time. Christmas is also one of those times where our culture is incredibly open to hearing about Jesus. Did you know that 80% of unchurched people say they would attend church if they were invited? 80%. That's high. Right now, someone in your life is waiting for you to invite them, waiting for you to share your story, to ask them to come and sit next to you on Sunday morning. Guys, this week, I want to encourage you. Be praying, thinking about who God is calling you to invite, whether it's on a Sunday or for Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve service, more people go to Christmas Eve service than any other service. Who are you going to invite for Christmas Eve? And as you're preparing your story, God is preparing their hearts for your invitation. In fact, where'd it go? On your way out today, you're going to get these invitation cards. You're going to get 3 of them, and you're probably going, why am I getting 3 of the exact same thing? Well, take one, put it on your fridge. First, it'll remind you to come on Christmas Eve. But 2, it'll remind you to pray for your family and your friends and the people that need to hear your story and the people that you need to be inviting. And then the other 2 are for you to give out and to invite someone to come and be with you on Christmas Eve, to sit with you. We're prepared to welcome them. We'll be hosting 3 services on Christmas Eve, 3 p.m., 4:30, and 6:30. And we want to help you connect your friends to your story and ultimately to Jesus. Let's pray. God, we thank you for giving us our story. We thank you for whatever healing work you have done in our lives. Lord, help us not to keep it to ourselves, but to go and tell. Lord, help us to love. Help us to love well and to share our stories. In your name we pray. Amen.